Look, I can't help but think that now might be a good time for a little fire and ice. Please do not know.
There's never a good time for fire and ice.
What happens when you mix fire and ice? Warm water, baby. It's bubbling, baby.
It is 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time for Fire and Ice. Mike Tipton, my guy, Brandon the Iceman Cone, joining us here on Fire and Ice. A little bit later on in the show, we're going to have UTEP Legend, Greg Foster, joining us. We're going to talk about all the stuff he's got going on. We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs. Those have been just weird, like fun and weird all at the same time. I decided, Brandon, that I was going to start watching the playoff games last week, and it just seems fans don't know how to act. We will address that a little bit later on in the show as well. Of course, I always want to do our little update, Brandon. How much weight are we down at this moment?
Well, as of the last weigh-in, we were down 168, so we were down to 292. The coveted number of 290 was the lowest I've been in my adult life back in the summer of 2011, Memorial Day weekend 2011. So we're about a little more than 2 pounds away, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed so we can reach that goal this coming Thursday when we do the weigh-in. So 168 and counting, my pal.
So we're at 168 and counting. Next, or actually during this month, I keep forgetting it's June. Like it's already June
1st.
Yeah. Later on this month, we're going to get the YouTube channel started going on as well.
I'm excited about that. I really am, and I want to motivate people. I want to help people, and I want to just share the wealth, because I've told you how great I feel and how everybody and their brother just keeps saying wonderful things, and it just warms my heart. It really does, to hear these things day in and day out. And I'm not asking for these things. I'm just, being myself. You know me, the happy-go-lucky, funny-looking fella, and I'm just walking, and it's like, hey, everybody's saying these nice things, and I'm like, I appreciate you, from the bottom of my heart, trying to encourage me to keep going and telling me these wonderful and sweet things. And like I said, I want to pay it forward. I just want to help other people that are struggling. And I know a lot of people struggle with their weight. That's one of the biggest things that people struggle with in life. So I want to be the person that now motivates other people and helps other people here.
So if I can ask, I don't want to dig too deep here, but what's been the comment? Because I know anytime that you have any of these transformations, someone's going to come up to you and there's going to be that one thing that kind of clicks in your head. What was that click moment where you realized, man, I'm doing something big here?
Well, when I was at school and somebody asked me where my fat suit was, I think that was probably no. I mean, it's funny. No, I actually would say just a matter of when someone didn't even hardly recognize me, and they were like, "Is that you?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's still me. I swear it's me." Where they're like, you are a completely different, transformed individual. You are not the person that we knew for so long, and what you're doing is all inspiring and incredible. And just hearing them compliment me and say the sweetest things in the world, and it's just, how do I put it? It never gets old. I mean, it's nice to hear, and it's almost surreal sometimes to hear it, because I struggled for so long. And I mean, I still consider myself struggling. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a very disciplined and challenging thing to do. But nevertheless, I could tell you that I think people's reactions, especially since they hadn't seen me for a long time with what was going on, that's just been the most wonderful thing that I've seen and heard from these individuals.
You and I did the Sun City Stealth game about, a little over a week and a half ago is whenever we did it. You put up a picture of you and I hanging out right before we started doing the broadcast. So I didn't get to see the messages and the comments as they came in. But whenever I went back and I was reading those comments, man, it was one of those moving moments where you think to yourself, man, this is really, really resonating with people.
Yeah, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not fishing for these compliments or anything. I'm just putting a picture of my buddy and I up doing the stealth game and enjoying myself with you. And then all of a sudden they keep coming. I mean, there was over 50 comments, and people were just saying the most incredible things. And obviously, like I said, they hadn't seen me for a while. I haven't been posting a lot of stuff. I'm not trying to brag about what I'm doing. I'm doing this for me and for my life and my health and well-being. I'm not really trying to say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. But people were very nice and sweet. And again, what they're saying has just been very heartfelt and just something I'll never forget.
Again, great stuff coming up for Brandon, especially here in the future. We're going to be doing a YouTube channel as well, so we can kind of chronicle his weight loss journey and the inspiration that he's been for a bunch of people out there getting started on their own weight loss journeys as well. Greg Foster going to join us here in just a little bit. Brandon, I wanted to start talking a little bit about the NBA. I want to see what you think about everything that's been going on. I don't want to get on the fan thing yet. I want to save that question for whenever Greg joins us. But just out of what you've seen or what you may have heard on the NBA side, has there been any surprises to you on what's going on with the games?
Well, I don't really think there's been too many surprises. I mean, I think that you're seeing, the Jazz having the commanding 3-1 lead over the Grizzlies, but the other series really they're close. I mean, I like the Suns and the Lakers. The Clippers seem to be the better team than the Lakers right now, which some people thought was the case last year, but it wasn't the case in the postseason. And I mean, I think that, a lot of things are going to decide these series. The New York Knicks, are they going to be able to get back in against Atlanta? That's another thing. The Portland-Denver series, the Mavericks, it's an interesting situation with them because you say to yourself, well, you're looking at, are they going to be able to weather the storm here with the Clippers defense? I mean, the Clippers defense has been tremendous. And what, Luka Doncic, I mean, the most exciting player arguably right now in the NBA, would love to see him advance. And look who it is, our buddy Greg Foster.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Greg, good to see you.
UTEP legend
likewise.
Greg Foster. Greg Foster joining us here on Fire and Ice. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time out today. We're talking NBA playoffs. Brandon was giving us a little bit of his surprises. He's surprised by the Denver or the Dallas Mavericks and the LA Clippers. No one wants to win at home is what it seems like with that series going on right now. What's been the biggest surprise? Again, thank you for joining us. What's been the biggest surprise you've seen in the NBA playoffs?
You know what? I think you mentioned it. Dallas, the Clipper Dallas series is kind of backwards, like you said. But I think the Clippers are starting to, click and hit on all cylinders. So we'll see what happens going forward. And I tell you what, though, Doncic is a problem. He is a serious problem for those guys.
He's to me probably the most exciting player in the NBA today, Greg.
No doubt. He just plays at his own pace and and you still can't stop him. He's not doing anything fast, but he is big. He overpowers guys and most of the point guards like Patrick Beverley try to guard him, just can't guard him. He's just too big for him. Gets where he wants on the court.
How happy are you that you played in the era that you played in? Because how do you think you would fare in today's NBA having to guard a guy like Kevin Durant or Luka Doncic out there where they just pull up from like half court and drain the shot from there?
It is kind of crazy, but on the flip side, you get to play against guys too that can't touch you, and it's a lot different, man. Big guys are now stretching the floor, something that I could do but didn't get a chance to do back then. So I don't know, I would have liked to try it. It would have been fun.
Talking about an interesting series, the Lakers and the Suns. A lot of people, obviously the Suns were the favorite going in, the 7-2 matchup. Anthony Davis's health has been a concern. The health of Chris Paul on the other side also been a concern. I think DeAndre Ayton's play is something that if he could keep stepping it up, the Suns could be a tough out in this series. How do you see the rest of this series going, Greg?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nose. It really boils down to health, and that's for every team in the playoffs. Now you got Embiid with problems, but if Anthony Davis doesn't play, I can see the Suns getting out of that first round for sure.
How shocking is it to see like what we're seeing out of the teams that represented the East and the West and the respective conference finals? Because Boston was decimated. Miami was going through a whole bunch of their issues. LA, we're looking at them. It seems like they were never healthy this year. How shocking is that for you to see?
Well, it's not really shocking. I know this year was different, obviously, with COVID and, the number of games played and duration, between games. It made it difficult to even practice during the regular season. Is that good or bad? It's proving that, the number of injuries is proving that it probably wasn't a good thing to have all those days off and not practice. The one thing you do get when you practice is I think you become more durable. A lot of people have been seeing it, the other way in trying to save your body, but your body doesn't get used to going through the grind. And so now here we are in the playoffs. Guys are trying to play every game, and they're just not used to it. mentally or physically. I think it's more mental than anything. I hate to compare, the new school kids, versus the old school guys like myself, but you learned how to play through pain. You learned how, I mean, injury is different than pain. Injury is different than soreness. And so when you shut it down during the season for extended periods of time for injuries aren't significant, I think this is the result you see.
You're now an assistant coach with the Indiana Pacers, Greg. How much do you think the athletes and your players will actually look forward to a complete offseason, the I guess away from the rigor and things being more normal next year, and fans being at, I would say, 100% by the time next November comes about?
I'm looking forward to it. I hope everything is back to normal. I mean, really back to normal, because it was really different. A 3-game road trip felt like 2 weeks this year. There's no sense of normalcy. There's no team dinners. There's no leaving the hotels. So I think it really weighed on guys. It weighed on coaches. It was just so different, having to go through the rigors of testing, daily, sometimes twice a day. And it just, without the fans, I mean, it's different. There's a lot of guys that have played well, in the bubble that aren't having as good a year this year. And I think you're going to see some changes next year when guys have a full schedule of games too.
So Brandon brought up, fans should be back at 100% by the time the next season rolls around. We've seen the fans acting a little weird this last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
With, throwing popcorn on a guy like Russell Westbrook, which, by the way, you're a brave individual doing that. No one wants those problems. The water bottle being thrown at Kyrie Irving, someone spitting at Trae Young. 2 questions here for you, Greg. One, has that ever happened to you? Because I figure like playing basketball where you played basketball, something like that had to have happened. And then 2, how do we stop something like that from continuing? Because that needs to be stopped.
Yeah, it's never happened to me. I'm glad it hasn't. It shouldn't happen, in professional sports or sports at any level. But ultimately, it just seems like the whole world is mad. Things are getting back to normal, but everybody's angry from just being pent up for so long. So, and people are acting out. They're acting out on planes. They're just acting out. They're tired of being, told what to do, and it's like almost an epidemic in every area of our world today. And hopefully that gets back to normal too. People are going to get out and just start pumping their brakes again, and to be able to take a breath. And obviously there's no place for it in sports, and that can get dangerous.
What were your thoughts on the play-in games and the additional teams that were brought in? Were you a fan of that, Greg, or you'd rather see the 16 teams get in like usual?
Yeah, I think how much it helps stave off tanking, I don't know, but during the regular season, a team should benefit from being consistent during the regular year and finishing in the top 8. That's kind of how I feel about that. A team that finishes outside the top 8, I don't think they should be considered. They got to figure out a different way to handle the tanking issue.
So if you're the NBA, like, what would be the route that you would go to handle that tanking issue?
God, that's a hell of a question. And to be honest with you, I do not have a real answer for you. But yeah, something needs to be different.
Let's
because
talk
I mean, I think that another thing that needs to be different is we got to figure out how to get guys to play games. I mean, guys are sitting out, significant amounts of time. People pay great money to come see these guys play. And so when you go to see, one of our superstars playing, they're not on the roster, and you spend $1,000, for a family of 4, come to a game, with parking and refreshments and concessions and all of that, and the guy doesn't play, it's a problem. You know what I mean? And, and really looking at rosters, you almost have to have a super team. I used to think it was a bad thing, but now, from a coaching perspective, you almost have to have all these kind of bodies, these top players, just to field a team and be consistent. And it's sad to see, but I think something needs to be done about that. If you're going to, be out for 2 weeks with a hangnail or a sprained thumb, or maybe you got to go play 2-3 games in the G League before you come back. I don't know. And I bet you the number of injuries, I bet you the number of games lost would be different at that point.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point because the NBA is really the only sport where you don't see the superstars play a good amount of the regular season games. I mean, to me, I know it's an 82 game season, but the NHL long season, baseball long season, that you see that, like you said, it costs a bunch of money to go see these games today. You want to see the creme de la creme players. You don't want to see the bench play the whole game.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it affects coaches too. It affects winning percentages and people's livelihoods. But I don't know. The players have an awful lot of power these days in this league, and there's got to be some kind of happy medium. I would, want to believe that, but we're not there right now. That's for sure.
So you've been in the NBA, you've been around the NBA in those circles for a while here, and I want to know, outside of Shaquille O'Neal, because I figured that would be the guy, who was the toughest person for you to guard? And now looking at the game today, who do you think the toughest person to guard would be?
Oh wow, back in the good old days, it was Hakeem Olajuwon for sure. He had the best footwork. I think he was multifaceted. I think he could step out on the floor and shoot the ball like some of the big guys today. I mean, he just didn't do that back then. It wasn't required of him, but he was a hell of a challenge. In today's game, guarding a guy like Kevin Durant would be tough. 7 feet, can put it on the deck. Go coast to coast. Yeah, he's an incredible talent. To me, he's my favorite. Out there right now.
You played with the Bulls, many years ago. So you've had the honor of, I believe you played with Jordan, did you not?
Well, I missed him. That's the year he went to go play, baseball. Just
okay,
my luck.
okay, so 95. But I mean, you won a championship with Shaq and Kobe. But let me ask you, what was that experience like for you? And it was at the very tail end of your career too. I think it was with the 01 Lakers, correct?
Yeah, it was. And I was fortunate to be in a world championship 3 times and came away short, the first 2 times with the Jazz. But I was fortunate to get back there with the Lakers, and to get one was sweet. I mean, we had a great team. We had great guys, Shaq, Kobe, Robert Horry, Rick Fox, Derek Fisher, Horace Grant, J.R. Ryder, Ron Harper, Brian Shaw. It was a very talented team. So we ran through the playoffs. We only lost 1 game. So it was a fun group to be around too. We enjoyed the game. We were veterans, and, we policed ourselves. That's one thing that's very different in today's game. We policed ourselves as veterans. These kids, today, they don't do that.
And why has that changed there? Like why is that culture? Because it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Like if you played back in like Bill Russell's time and it was different now, then I can kind of understand it. It hasn't been that long since you played.
It's really a double-edged sword. Good basketball players still want to be coached. There's degrees of coaching today. Some guys don't want to hear it. Some guys don't want to be pushed. But, with that said, you can't have it both ways. If you're not going to push yourself, if you guys aren't going to police yourselves as a team, then the coach has to push. And that's when you see problems. You know what I mean? Now, if you're ultra talented like the New Jersey Nets and KD and Harden and Kyrie, I mean, you might get a little leeway. They're so talented but I'm sure that those guys police themselves, and that makes Steve Nash's job a little bit easier. But if you're the middle of the pack team and you want to act like you're KD or James Harden or Kyrie, it doesn't work. All this stuff resting started, with the Spurs when they were an older team. They rested their older players and had success doing that. The problem is this is a copycat league, and teams that weren't old started resting their guys. And that's how this whole thing snowballed. And I understand why the Spurs did it, and it was smart. But everybody started doing it, and it's not right. So
let's talk then. We're here towards almost the tail end of the first round. Who you have coming out of the West as of now, Greg? After you've seen most of this first round,
God, I really did like the Lakers still, believe it or not. But with Anthony Davis not being healthy, it's tough. That's a tough call. I don't even want to call the West. I still like the Nets coming out of the East for sure, but the West is a toss-up, man. The Clippers can get hot. I don't think it's going to be Dallas, but God, it's anybody's ball game. It's really up for grabs in the West.
as
I don't know if you can look at Denver or Portland as serious contenders, but
Yeah. It
it's,
could be
it's tough.
smoke and mirrors. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, what about your team, the or one of your former teams, the Utah Jazz? What about them? Because they ran through this regular season. Like that was a really, really good team, but it just seemed like no one bought stock in them.
Yeah, if healthy, they have as good a chance as anybody. If the Lakers are out of this thing, if Davis can't get back to, where he needs to be, like I said, they have as good a chance as any of the teams that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, even with them having the sixth man of the year in Clarkson, they don't go much deeper than that. So, they're one injury away from just being done, in my opinion. They are good. It's really time for them to show that they're great.
Speaking of your former team, when The Last Dance came out last year around this time, what were your thoughts? Did it bring back the memories of, when you were with those Jazz teams that were amazing teams? And any other year, to me, they would have won back-to-back titles had it not been for MJ and the Bulls. And that you actually were sitting there watching MJ's last shot ever as a Bull.
Yeah, I did. I didn't even watch the damn show, to be honest with you, man.
I was about to say that would have brought up nightmares.
I didn't even go there, man. It really was just so. I felt just because I was there and did it. I knew all the stories, and I'd been on both sides. I've been with Bulls and been with the Jazz, and I tried not to watch it. And I watched little bits and pieces, but I really didn't want to go there.
Sure. I hear you.
Yeah.
Whenever you look at like the people that you played with, like the legends that you played with, knowing that you were on a Bulls team, you had like Scottie Pippen and them there, Karl Malone, John Stockton, and people don't realize this. You were a big part of that team that they had in Utah that made it to the NBA Finals. And then, of course, Shaq and Kobe. Out of all those pantheons of teammates that you had, who would you say is like the guy that you always were like, man, I can't believe I was a teammate with him?
Well, Stockton and Malone were obviously a crazy tandem, right? Crazy duo, I should say. But and so were Shaq and Kobe. They had very different relationships. But the biggest takeaway from all those guys, Jordan, Pippen, Stockton, Malone, Kobe, Shaq, they were all the hardest workers. You didn't hear about them missing games like you hear about guys missing games today. Matter of fact, you didn't hear about them missing practices. And so what does that do as a leader of a team? It brings all of us role players in, and we don't miss a game. We don't miss practices, and we're all on the same page. And there was a pride factor that went into that. So, we say our kids are different today, and yes, they are, but, we're different too. I think ultimately it's our fault because we created that system, meaning us as adults. And it just goes all the way, trickles to, grade school, junior high, high school, AAU, whatever you want to call it. These kids are entitled, even at those younger ages. And so when we get them, we put money in their hand and they're entitled, it can be a problem. But I still have the belief that these guys, the best players, want to be coached the right way, coached hard and pushed. So.
Talk about your son, Greg Foster Jr. He had been with Gonzaga. I see he's with St. Joseph's now. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's with St. Joe's, and he's doing great. He's home for the summer, and he's doing some things, maybe with the NBA and doing an internship because he's going to graduate in December, and maybe get into some management positions, maybe even some coaching, and we'll see where his career goes play wise. But he's a sharp dude, and I know he's into real estate investment already, and so he's doing wonderful. Thanks for asking about him.
Of course, absolutely. And Greg, I was going to ask you. You've coached. You were in Atlanta. Now you're with Indiana, and of course, for so many years with Milwaukee. Your thoughts on being in such a significant basketball state, in the state of Indiana, and how the fans are there in Indianapolis?
Oh, great fans, knowledgeable fans, just like you mentioned. These people know basketball out here. I mean, everybody, young and old. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, this year was different with COVID and us having a lack of fans. What it'll be like next year. So I'm excited to see that.
How often do you drive by a park and see a pickup game and think to yourself, I can just go out there and wreck house?
Oh man, I never do that because I can barely move anymore. I tell you what, they got a lot of outside courts out here in this place, man. They do love their basketball. So, so I'll just work to get out of this recliner here and get back to my bed when we get off the show. The
like Tipton do at
body doesn't
home.
move like it used to. Not even close.
You know, I was going to also mention, Greg, your wife's family's from El Paso. El Paso's always going to have a special place in your heart. How great would it be for the future for you to maybe come back here and coach? Because I'd love to see it, have you come back and be the coach one day.
Brother, I've tried twice now. You know, I mean, I don't know what it's going to take. You know, I was really, really hoping this time around would be different. You know, with the success that Jawan Howard, you know, had up at Michigan, with Rod Woodson getting the job here at IU. I don't know. You know, so
well, I
we'll
was
see.
pulling for you. I was pulling for you, just to let you know, buddy.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I won't close the door on it. You know, I mean, El Paso's home. We will retire there. I'll be back in maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks to go look for a piece of land, and we're going to build a home and do that whole thing. So I would really, really love to have the opportunity someday and anywhere, you know, just, you know, if you're going to do this job and you're going to be in it as long as I could, I would like to be the head guy and, you know, put my stamp on the team and develop a culture and develop just an attitude in a team. I think that'd be pretty fun.
I think what that means, Brandon, is that you and I need to take it upon ourselves and just apply some pressure, like as much possible pressure as we can to get him.
Somebody's got to apply some goddamn pressure. Holy crap! I mean, come on.
Hey, it's like you love the area, you know the area. You were an assistant coach here under Floyd. You're a friggin' legend. I mean, come on. I thought you would have been the perfect hire. I'm going to say that right now. Seriously.
I can recruit too. I did pretty good before. I could do it again. And but you know, hey, c'est la vie. You know, not having any head coaching experience can bite you in the butt at times, but it's really not that hard. It really is. You know, just. Been around enough greats and I've been around enough poor coaches too to know what works and what doesn't work. So someday, guys, we'll do that.
If I could ask this question before we go ahead and let you go, you started your collegiate career at UCLA. What was it that made you transfer over to UTEP?
You know, I was just having too much fun out there. I was a little immature. You know, and then I saw Antonio Davis, how good he was doing out there in El Paso, and we were high school buddies, and so I decided to make the change, and yeah, there you have it. I don't regret it at all. Everything worked out. I met a wonderful lady out there. I raised my family out there in El Paso, and again, it is home. I love the people there. Life is good. Life is slow motion, and you know, it has just enough for me to be happy and content.
And true story, I've told this many times as an educator. I've been a teacher for 13 years now. When I was a substitute teacher back in I think it was 05 or 06, I was at Lincoln Middle School, and this young lady says to me, "You know who my dad is? It's Greg Foster." What? And I happen to have your daughter. Her name's escaping me right now, but she was the sweetest little girl. And so I subbed for your daughter. She was very nice.
Awesome. I'm glad she was. They're not too old enough to get spankings.
Will you tell her Mr. Cohn says hello?
I will.
The funniest thing is Brandon told me that you were going to come on the show. I think it was about a week ago. Whenever you're like, "Hey, we're working on getting Greg Foster here," and I told my wife, my sister-in-law was there with us. My sister-in-law has an autograph of yours. I don't know where she got this autograph at, but it's on a napkin, and it's like Greg Foster. That's pretty damn cool, man.
Wow, that's awesome, guy. That's awesome. It's home, and I look forward to getting back. I'll be out there in a week and a half and playing some golf and just hanging out with family and friends and. Maybe try to get some fishing in, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
I think
appreciate you.
I think what needs to happen is whenever he comes into town, if he has some time, we got to get a picture of all three of us together. You can autograph that, and then now I can dwarf my sister-in-law's autograph that she has.
No doubt, man.
Yes,
got you covered.
Well, Greg, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you're a busy man, and you've always made time for me on my show and our show now, and you mean the world to us, and I thank you so much for always coming on.
You got it, guys. Anytime. All right. God bless you guys. Okay?
Same good. For you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
UTEP legend Greg Foster joining us here on Fire and Ice. Brandon, a great guest as always, my friend. That does suck for him, though, that he was with the Bulls the 1 year that Jordan wasn't there.
Yeah, it's like the 1 year. Well, technically yeah, I was going to say, it's like if you're going to be with the Bulls, you want to be with that one of those teams that gets, one of those 2 3-peats. But yeah, that's insane. I forgot it was around 95. So that's right. Jordan was playing baseball. He didn't come back till, obviously late in the spring. But yeah, no, I mean, but still, hey, he got one at the tail end with Kobe and Shaq, and that's pretty damn cool too.
I knew the second you brought up The Last Dance, like, there is no way he watched that. I guarantee no Utah Jazz player or fan even probably watched that.
Yeah, it probably would have been tough. I mean, I just because trying to relive that 20 plus years later, it had to be hard enough to see in person, especially the way he ended their their dreams of a championship in '98, where you really thought they had a good chance. They have home court advantage, and they had the best record in the league that year, I think. And they were just, it looked like they were going to win it that year. But no, Jordan was like, not so fast, So
my favorite thing with the whole Jordan thing is I went back and I watched his Hall of Fame induction speak, because I'm that nerd, right? Like I didn't get to watch the Hall of Fame induction this year, so I went back and I watched all the highlights on it. Vanessa Bryant, by the way, an amazing speech at the Hall of Fame this year. But I went back and I watched Jordan's Hall of Fame speech. And I mean, this is, 10, 15 years after he's done with that game, the 98 Bulls. And he says, and if I see Byron Russell with a pair of shorts on, I'm still going to take the work to him. I was like, that dude is just built different.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you could say that. I think that's the understatement of the year, isn't it, Tip?
Yeah, just watching that, and like you and I never really got to talk about that documentary. That was one of my favorite things to watch, because you got to see just how sociopathic Michael Jordan really is.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, not only is he the greatest badass that's ever lived, but he knew it, and he loved to play mind games. He was the ultimate. How would I put it? He just. If you even looked at him funny, you were in for something. And the way that he was talking about how they beat Seattle because George Karl didn't pay attention to him in the restaurant, paying attention to a fellow Tar Heel, and I just thought that was hilarious. And I mean, yeah, you were just like, this guy. It's like, you ever hear of you're great and it. And I mean, look, he's still the GOAT. To me, they'll always be the GOAT. I mean, obviously, I'm biased because I'm a huge Bulls and Chicagoan. But ultimately, the man he's that egotistical because he was that damn good. And when you're that good, you can be like that. That's okay to have that mindset.
Well, so you can afford to be that guy whenever you're that damn good. You get to back it up. My favorite thing about that whole series, though, was him talking about a player that I can't even remember the name of that was on the Washington Bullets at one point, where he said that this player said something bad to him. Jordan drops 45 and then 50 on him, and then comes out and says, yeah, he never said any of that. Like he made it up in his own mind just to be that motivated to embarrass this dude.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was it. Now I tell you what, some of the stories that you saw in that, and remember there was no sports going on. I think it debuted last April, if I'm not mistaken, and thank God, because we really needed it. And to me, it was the most entertaining series, one of them that I've ever seen.
Well, for me, I think I'm going to go back and watch that. I don't think you and I have ever taken a trip down like the road of nostalgia and spoken about like our favorite players of all time or anything like that. I think eventually one of these days we have to do it. I mean, you see the jersey hanging up behind me. You know where he lands on my list over here, little Tim Duncan All-Star jersey from 2015. But man, like whenever you think about that, like the teams that Greg Foster played with, the people that Greg Foster played with, it's hard for me to think that, damn, dude, like at one point in time, you just have to sit back and be like, man, I was super blessed to play on these teams.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Greg, look, you're going to be a great role player like Greg was. And, some of the roles that he had were rather significant. And I think you hit the nail on the head talking about how he was a key part to those Jazz back-to-back finals appearances. And then, being with some of the teams that he was with, he had a lot of influence on these teams, and he was always a really good player. I mean, look, you play that long in the NBA, it's not by accident. So that's what everybody has to remember. And then the whole cherry on top, getting the ring his last year in the league. I mean, being with one of the greatest teams there of the 2000s, clearly, and, maybe some would say of all time, those Lakers dynasty in the early 2000s.
Who do you think, like with the teams that he had, if you just put them head to head in their prime, I guess we have to take the Bulls out of this because he didn't have Jordan on that team.
No, absolutely not.
But that Utah Jazz team, if that team would have been like healthy and we have them in their prime against that Shaq and Kobe team. That would have been fun, man.
Yeah, that would have been really fun because people need to remember that they were also a very well-coached team with Jerry Sloan. Jerry Sloan was an awesome coach, and they were a really good defensive team as well. I mean, they had some amazing role players there. Byron Russell was there. And, of course, whenever you had Stockton and Malone, I mean, those guys were just incredible in their heyday. So, that team was great right before the Lakers became the Lakers of the early 2000s and got the three-peat and the whole Shaq Kobe, run that was going on. But yeah, that would have been interesting to see those teams go head to head. I look at those teams as like, one of the great dynasties, or I'm not really a dynasty, but one of the great Western Conference teams of the 90s that just so happened to, unfortunately for them, run into MJ and the Bulls.
The buzzsaw known as Michael Jordan and the Bulls is what they ran into there. But like looking at that, and it's weird to say this as a guy that's like a Jordan fan, a Bulls fan. This is where you're going to get like the test of my basketball knowledge. I hated Greg Ostertag because he would go in there and he would spell Greg Foster. So like Foster would come in and be the substitute for Ostertag, and then Antoine Carr would come in, and I hated Antoine Carr with his glasses and the red lights on him and all that, or the red lenses on him and all that nonsense. Jeff Hornacek, I don't know what it was about him. Like anytime he got the ball on a wing, I thought he was just going to drain a three. It was beautiful watching that type of basketball, man.
Oh yeah, yeah, and yeah, I totally remember Antoine Carr, and I actually remember even the Jazz coming down here to play an NBA preseason game the year after they lost to the Bulls. I think it was the year after they lost to the 98 Bulls. I'm pretty sure, and I can't remember who they played, but I do remember me sporting my Chicago Bulls championship t-shirt and sitting close to the team to rub it in, because obviously I was such a diehard Bulls and MJ fan. But ultimately, yeah, that, like I said, that team was full of great role players.
One of my favorite memories of like watching basketball here in El Paso is the year that Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson got drafted, because being born on Jordan's birthday, sharing the name, all that stuff, growing up the Bulls fan that I was before Jordan retired the first time, I became like a de facto UNC fan. So I loved watching them. They would run shop on everybody. And I don't know if you remember this or not. They were traded for each other, Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson.
Yeah.
They came down here, and the Warriors played the Raptors in a preseason game. And it was the first time I had ever seen the Don Haskins Center sold out, because I didn't get to go to a lot of the games as a kid. I went to this, I was like probably 17, 18 years old. And that was like the first time that I actually got to like really see NBA basketball up close and personal. And that to me was one of the coolest things to see, that they used to, and it makes me miss it. Like, why don't we do that anymore here?
It was great. And I'll tell you, my greatest memory of a preseason game, I want to say the year was 2005, and it was the Nuggets playing the Trailblazers. And here I met so many cool people. I met George Karl. He was a Nuggets coach. Rick Majerus, who was George Karl's buddy. And then after the game, I was with ESPN El Paso. I had a credential, and I go into the locker room, and there's Byron Russell, there's Nahara, and then everybody leaves, and it's just Carmelo Anthony and I. And here I am kibitzing with Carmelo Anthony, talking about winning a championship at Syracuse. And we were actually BSing and asking each other questions about each other for like 10 minutes. And he was the coolest dude in the world. And then he goes out and he gets mobbed as he's about to try to get on the bus. I'm like, I was just kibitzing with that guy like nothing, That was my great story with Carmelo Anthony.
That's actually really awesome, dude. Carmelo Anthony is one of those stories to me that's like, man, he's so damn good. He doesn't get the love that he deserves.
Yeah.
Just because, like we're talking about Malone and Stockton and all those teams, he ran into a buzzsaw. His buzzsaw was LeBron James.
Yeah, I mean, you get drafted the same year that Wade and LeBron James get drafted. Someone's going to be looked upon as not as great as the other. But, I mean, come on, look at that draft class of 2003, one of the best we've seen in forever.
Who was the number 2 pick of that 2003 draft class? Do you remember who that was?
Trying to remember. It wasn't Anthony, was it? No,
Anthony was number 3. I think Wade was like number 5 or 7.
I cannot remember. Who was 2?
Darko Milicic.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years. Are you kidding me? Good job with that one. That's a trivia question, right?
Again, the useless knowledge of basketball that I have in my head. I even remember making a bet with my brother that LeBron James would be better than Yao Ming because he thought Yao Ming was like going to be this, transcendent basketball player. He was great, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't LeBron James.
No. I loved Yao though, but he wasn't. I mean, come on, there's no LeBron James, right?
The first NBA game that I went to in Houston, I got to see it was Yao and Steve Francis and all them. It was like 06. The Spurs were on their, championship runs that they were doing at that point in time. And Yao Ming hip checked Tony Parker into like over the announce table and into the stands. And that's where you realize how big that dude is. Tim Duncan looked miniature next to Yao Ming, dude. And it was the craziest thing in my mind to see that guy playing basketball.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, God, what an experience then to have that you remember for the rest of your life there. I mean, you've been to some cool games.
I've been to a handful of games. Greg hit it on the head whenever we were talking earlier. That 2013 season that Miami defeated the Spurs, and the Spurs came back in 2014. I went to a Spurs game in 2014. Because I paid the extra money. I wanted to see this particular game. The Miami Heat rematch, San Antonio Spurs. The Heat sat Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Bosh in that whole damn game. San Antonio sat Tim Duncan. They sat Ginobili. They sat Kawhi Leonard. And they sat Tony Parker. I paid upwards of $1,000, like you said, to go to this game, and I got literally nobody.
Boy, I bet you enjoyed that one. Boy, that sounds like the game of the century.
It did come down to a buzzer beater, though. I will say that it was a 3-pointer that Miami hit at the top of the key, right over the fingers of I want to say it was either Splitter or Umberto. That shot got like drained right in their face. The Spurs lost in regulation by 1 point. It was a decent game.
Sounds like a real barn burner.
Now you've been to a lot more of those things than I have, though.
Oh, I mean, come on. I saw the 95 Bulls play, greatest team of all time, won 72 games. I saw the 93 Bulls play. I saw the 98 Bulls play. I saw Jordan play with the Wizards his last year ever in the league. I've seen Shaq and Kobe play together back at the old Great Western Forum in 98. I mean, I've seen the Spurs play, in San Antonio with Duncan and Ginobili and everyone. That was, 10 years ago or whatever. I mean, but for me to have seen Michael Jordan play, including in the late 80s, I'm blessed. I mean, I've seen that guy play so many times in person at the old Chicago Stadium, the United Center. I mean, I've seen Jordan play. My best memory ever, though, of Jordan, I was a kid, didn't know Mike took us from a hole in the ground, was like, 11 years old. My stepfather needed to buy me a ticket, and we're at the old Chicago Stadium, buys me a ticket, 15 rows from the Bulls bench. I've got a single seat there. And I remember sitting behind the Bulls bench, and it was the Bulls and the Knicks. And I remember seeing Jordan dunk right in front of my eyes. And to this day, my mouth just dropped. That was the coolest experience. And I knew what I was seeing at the time. That's how significant it was.
One of my favorite things, like Jordan with the Wizards, how you brought that up, was I want to say it was whenever he first came back. It was like, 02, around that time frame, right? Whenever he first came back, they were showing a preseason game of his on ESPN. And he steals the ball, has a wide open, fast break in front of him, goes up to jam it, and then just bangs it on the front of the rim. The first time I ever remember watching Jordan miss a dunk, I sat there and I thought to myself, this dude's washed. A couple minutes later, goes down, gets the ball, makes sure this time, goes up, and then just reverse dunks it. I was like, man, like the ageless wonder that is Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I remember the game against the Suns. It was late in the season. Like I said, this was literally the last month of his career. And he had like 15 points, but he still had that beautiful fadeaway jumper that I'll never forget. And he still had it. All those years later, he still had it.
What is it about Jordan that we hold him like at this higher regard than what we hold basically anyone else at, right? Because I mean, you talk about like Stockton and Malone. That was poetry in motion, man.
Yeah.
That was beautiful whenever you look at it in hindsight. But they're still not Michael Jordan. Hakeem Olajuwon, Greg Foster hit that on the head too. The best footwork. Like I go back now and I'll look at TikToks of Hakeem Olajuwon teaching players how to play, like an old Hakeem Olajuwon, and still that beautiful footwork where he's like, just a beautiful shot. Not Jordan. He won championships, but he's not Jordan? Why is Jordan so much higher up there than everyone else?
Because Jordan was the best clutch player of all time. That's why. And whenever it came down to crunch time, Jordan was the man. There was never anybody better. There's never been anybody better. There's never been anybody that was more willing to take the last shot. And there was never anybody that did better under stress and under pressure. I mean, that was a perfect 6-0 in the finals and beat teams that had no business not winning championships in the 90s. And we have to think about how much better those teams were that he beat than even some of the teams you're seeing. Because today the game is, compared to then, I think it's garbage, if you want to know the honest to God truth. I mean, come on, look at how defense was played back then. With no hand checking and whatever. I mean, it was a different era. It was a different game. Today's NBA, Jordan would score 50, 60 points a game. I mean, he was the greatest player and one of the most challenging errors to ever play the game. And like I said, if you think about one thing that he did better than anyone else, that was in the clutch. He always took care of business, always.
But I feel like we don't hold Tom Brady in that same regard. And Tom Brady, obviously the Jordan of the NFL, we don't hold him that way.
Tom Brady is the greatest NFL player of all time. Okay, he is the GOAT. Some people may argue and say, greatest NFL player? Really? Yeah. I mean, come on. Who goes to another team and wins a championship? I mean, the guy is so damn entertaining to watch. And the crazy thing is he just may well do it again this year too.
How insane would that be? And of course, as Cowboys fans, seeing that they get Tampa Bay the first game of the season, that doesn't sit very well with me. But hey, it might be fun.
Yeah, if you like to get your ass kicked, game one, sure.
Maybe they do like to get their ass kicked, Brandon. One thing that I wanted to talk about as well, I don't know if you've been into the baseball season, anything like that that's going on right now. And it's always one of those weird subjects to try to bring up, but Marcell Ozuna being caught by the police choking his wife at that point in time. Whenever the police are there and they witness that has to be the end of a career, right? And I don't feel like that's something that should just be glossed over. He was caught by the police committing the crime.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrible. And I mean, we've seen other players' careers come to an end because of domestic violence, and it's just that there's no room for that. That's completely unacceptable. And I mean, there's a lot of things that you forgive players for, though. I mean, I will say we've seen a lot of players bounce back after some horrible things that they've done. So is that going to end his career? I mean, depends how much somebody wants his services. And if people can forgive, which they seem to be very forgiving nowadays, then he may very well still have a game somewhere. So I would not hold it against the team to have him still in the future, but that's unacceptable. It's always unacceptable.
Another thing that I find unacceptable is the fan action. We didn't get to go into great detail with it with Greg, but the fans at the NBA games right now, like we alluded to earlier, throwing water bottles at people, spitting on Trae Young, dropping popcorn and stuff like that. I think yesterday during the Philadelphia 76ers game, a fan ran out onto the court just to jump up and try to hit the backboard. That stuff, there's no room for that either, right? That has to be dealt with.
Absolutely. They're a danger to themselves, and they're a danger to anybody on the court. And I mean, look, we're not out of the pandemic yet. It's coming closer to coming to an end, thank God. But there's no room for that crap. The players, unlike any other game, you're able to get closer to the players, which is wonderful. But ultimately, you can't have that kind of thing. The fans need to know their place at these games.
Eventually, the way that I'm looking at this, we've seen this happen a bunch of times with Russell Westbrook. Again, I don't think anybody wants those problems. That dude looks like he's cut out of a damn comic book, right? I fear that this is going to happen, and we're going to get another one of these Malice at the Palace like we had, 15 years ago.
No, I absolutely. I mean, they need to be overly cautious, and the fans have been acting really crazy. And Greg had a point, about how they've been cooped up for so long that people are doing stupid things. But to me, people always do stupid things. I don't know whether it's they've been cooped up or not. Leave it to the fans to be a bunch of morons. And again, there's no place for that in this game.
How sad is it whenever Kevin Durant, the man who owns multiple burner accounts, tells you that you need to grow up?
Yeah, then you have that's a downright comical.
Well, my dude, Brandon the Iceman Cohen, of course, I don't want to gloss over this a whole bunch of times, but you're going to be doing something pretty cool. We're going to be creating a YouTube channel for you so that you can tell your inspirational story of your weight loss journey and all that stuff. I'm looking forward to getting that done and produced and put out there on YouTube for you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate you, Tip. I'm not going to lie. I couldn't do it without you. You're my pal. We've been on this journey. You've seen me go on this journey, and you've seen me progressively lose the weight. So that's why I wouldn't rather have anyone else here to help me out than you, because you are my buddy, and I appreciate you.
And I got nothing but love for you, Brandon.
Right back at you, my pal.
Everybody, we're going to go ahead and sign off right now. We appreciate you tuning in. Of course, our guest, Greg Foster, for joining us earlier on today's show as well. A wealth of knowledge there, and I can't wait to try to find out what we need to do, Brandon, to get him to become the next head coach at UTEP. Nothing against Joe Golding. There has to be a shot for Greg Foster to become the next head coach at UTEP.
I don't see why he got passed up twice. I mean, once I guess I could understand, but twice, that's I can't say anything. Who knows? Goldie could have a great success here, but I don't think you bypass a Greg Foster, considering what he's done for the city and considering what I feel he could do for the program. But it's not my decision. I'm just here to give opinions.
Buddy, I got nothing but love for you. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.